Welcome to the 2025 Tower Division C build tutorial and tips video. In this video, I'll be talking about tips and tricks to succeed in Tower this season. The first thing you should know is that this event does not come easy. It probably requires the most precise building out of all of the build events shown in Division C. This is heavily based off of Balsa Engineer's video for towers, bridges, and just primary balsa structures for the Science Olympiad rotations. I wanted to thank Balsa Engineer for all his videos that he produced, and it really gave me a head start in this season. Now, I wanted to add on to what he said and elaborate some of my own ideas and incorporations into his design. So let's get started. What makes a tower so special this year? Well, the requirements are actually different from last year. For Division C, you have a 3-point tower testing apparatus, which means that your tower is triangular with triangular legs. If you happened to use rectangular legs, the legs wouldn't work out in a way that allows your cross bracings to be straight and even, and causing it to be crooked, which is not a good thing for the balance of your tower. One major thing that most teams had to go through was to sand the legs into triangular legs. On websites such as Specialized Balsa or many craft store, they don't offer equilateral triangles for sale, which is a 60-60-60 degree triangle. This means that it's really hard to find pre-made, right-sized legs. And as can be shown here, this is a sanding jig first designed by Balsa Engineering for this year. And what's special about this is that I actually modified it a bit to make the side lengths and edges thicker than proposed in Balsa Engineering's model. Why? Well, for many reasons. Starting off, when printing with PLA or any plastic-like material, 3D printers often have temperature shifts which cause the plastic to either shrink or expand. And in this case, many of the printed molds actually shrink in size, which means that our legs aren't able to fit in them very nicely. Which is another thing. When legs are made, these are very thin, as you can notice, compared to a square leg from last year, because a triangle's area covers about a third or almost 2/3 area less than a square, which means that even though our triangle is still 1/8 by 1/8, after sanding it down, the area is actually smaller and the leg feels thinner, which is actually the case when testing. One major thing about tower is to have a good balance between the legs and the cross bracings. If your legs are too dense, it causes your tower to be heavy. If your legs are too light or not dense enough, then the bracings will have to endure much more. A good balance between legs and cross bracings is super important and a key to success. And I'll be talking about this cross bracing design just shortly, but we actually changed the cross bracing design from 10 layers of 1/16 down to only 8 layers of 1/20. But you might be asking, why? There's a lot less layers and your bracings are much thinner. Well, one key thing, if you haven't noticed yet, is that my towers have a special design down here. And as you scale up the tower, you might notice that there's actually horizontal bracings. But why is that? Well, that's what I'll be covering. But back to the legs. When sanding down the legs, we used a rotary sander, which is an electric sander. And that basically means that the jig that we were using And when we put in the wood, it would actually shake a lot, which would cause the leg to come out a bit uneven and rocky at edges. We set the rotary sander to the lowest power possible, and then after that, we chose to get a piece of sandpaper and roughly just sand the rest ourselves. After getting most of it done by the rotary sander, the perfect touches are made by us and by hand. This allows our triangular legs to come out very smooth and perfect without any fiber damages or like microscopic tears, which is one major thing that causes a lot of towers to fail. If there are weak spots in the leg, that means that at that spot, tower is very likely to break. Now, let's move on to the primary design of the tower, the cross bracings. Let's talk about the cross bracings. So a lot of people follow Boston Engineering's 10-layer design of 1/16 cross bracings. But I've noticed that that wasn't actually the best or most optimal design. When towers fail, they usually curve inward from the legs, like this. Say my legs of the tower were originally straight like this. And then as it bends, as the compression weight pushes down, the leg will actually curve or bend slightly, causing it to snap. One major thing about this is that the snap actually occurs near the bottom of the leg, like this. Rather than the entire leg, the bottom of the leg is most susceptible to this damage. And compression weight is a very compressive part, no pun intended, of the tower. And in this event, you want to hold the most you can. And for a lot of teams, and this is very important, they're using the bonus design. As explained in Boston Engineering's videos, the bonus design is actually more efficient and more effective this year than compared to a non-bonus because the area of a triangle doesn't scale very proportionally, and which means that you're getting more score for doing not so much more. So let's get started. As can be seen here, my tower has these horizontal bracings scattered throughout at the midpoint of each cross bracing X, as shown with my fingers here. And this horizontal bracing is really critical because it actually helps the tower to not pull apart. The horizontal bracings have this like factor that the X bracings don't have, and it actually keeps the tower more intact. And the reason why it's at the midpoint of each of the cross bracings is the more empty space the tower has, such as this leg, and pretend that it is just my tower. The more empty space you have on the leg, the more susceptible it's going to snap and break into pieces. And to mitigate this, we had these midpoints introduced by the horizontal bracings. This splits the further sections of the leg into smaller portions, which don't have much susceptibility to warping, snapping, bending, etc. And another thing about this is, why are there so many bracings at the bottom compared to the top? Well, for the stuff at the bottom, the horizontal bracings, the second layer from the top when using 8 bracings is the most critical part of the tower. When it bends, it's going to bend at the bottom, but not the very bottom. At the bottom, we put 2 of these horizontal bracings to ensure that it doesn't break, but we put 3 here. And this has proven a lot of success for all of our towers this season. especially at competitions such as Great Oak or USC in California, where we got scores of 3,600 plus and 4,000 respectively. And another major thing about this is that the horizontal bracings at the bottom, only the middle one goes through. Here's a close-up. The middle one actually goes through the entire tower, while the two upper and lower ones connect to the middle. This is so the legs of the tower are still kept in shape and the cross bracings don't collide with each other, causing impact or collision issues. And a major thing to note is that we always glue the bracings of the tower together, which means that the intersection of the X, or such as the horizontal and the X, this middle section where the X intersects is glued. This is because, say I have an X here. If it were to bend, it would bend like this, where it would curve either inward or outward, creating this empty space in the middle. And with empty space as shown, the more empty space your tower has, the more likely it's gonna fail. And it's kind of like mimicking a stronger device without actually using more materials, which is called optimization. A lot of teams follow this blind suit of not experimenting with more designs than just the traditional 10 layers. When looking at electricity towers or recepting towers out on like a highway or in the middle of nowhere, you'll probably notice that those metal towers have a similar horizontal bracing to the tower shown here. We got a lot of inspiration from manuscripts on the internet and just by traveling outside and looking at real-life applications. And these applications help a lot when designing a tower like this. And chances are there's probably an even more optimized solution to designing a tower. But this is the best one that we have came up with so far, and it has been the most consistent scoring one. This isn't very heavy at all because of the 20th cross bracings, and with the large amounts of horizontal bracings and X bracings, it balances out the weight distribution of the 15 kilogram load being pushed on top of the tower. As said before, the balance between the density of your legs and density and amount of cross bracings is super important. The more cross bracings you have, the better, but it will be heavy. So find a good midpoint or a Goldilocks spot for the density, which I will be talking about next for all the weights and measurements of my sticks and bracings. Let's talk about weights. To get started, the reference I'm going to be using is my 5-gram tower from this year. And another reference I'll be using is a lighter tower, which is around 4.9. For a 5.0 tower, I used 0.71, 0.70, and 0.70 legs. Anywhere around 0.7 is a good spot to nail. And one thing with legs is that you should choose a consistent weight for all of them. If you have one leg that is denser than the others, the weight will be most susceptible to the others, which is kind of an uneven distribution of weight. And plus, if one leg is dense and the other two are very light, then that means your weight should approximately be the same. So why not just use 3 legs that are the same weight? But this can be pretty hard to find, especially with the sanding process this year. It becomes very tedious. And for bracings, we chose extra light 1/20th balsa ordered for the extra light specialized balsa grade. For our tower, we usually dry box it the day of the competition, about 3-4 hours beforehand. And together, for the tower, we have many bracings and legs, which are pre-dried. And then after that, from a 4.24 approximately tower to about a 5.0 because dry boxing is really useful if done right. Our cross bracing total is about 3 grams to 3.1 grams, which is a good estimate and range for a 5.0 tower. If built with the right mindset and good structural integrity and focus throughout the entire session, your tower will surely hold. A 5.0 tower can be hit very consistently from my test shown. For example, at USC, where I got a 5.0 tower along with our other team, which also got a 5.0 tower, which tied for second place at USC with a 4K score. And the first place team was not far off. And let's just say that dry boxing is a pretty big deal because after you've weighed everything, the glue is approximately 0.1 to 0.2 grams. And the glue I use is light CA grade, which means it's not like BSI purple, which is medium viscosity. It's light viscosity. Although there are other glue products that I've tried out, I feel like this one works the best, and I'll be listing it in the description below. This tower is built primarily based around getting first place, so obviously there will be some risk, but this logic also applies if you want to play it safe. For example, at regionals, we had one safe tower for our top team and a reach tower for our second team, which was 5.05 grams and 5.45 grams respectively. Now, let's move on to the jigs I designed, which is very fascinating for those of you who like to design models. And I think this will be a brand new field for a lot of people watching to notice and point out. So let's get there. I have modified a couple jigs for this season, including the sanding jig, which was talked about back in the sanding and leg phase. But for this section of the video, I wanted to talk about my custom tower jig along with a sanding jig I have here, which is the red box. So to get started, whenever you're building, a tower jig is usually just like this, probably with a hollow opening at the bottom or carved out spots in the middle of the tower to save materials. But one cost that comes with that is, although you're saving time and material, it really doesn't offer you the very best option when building a tower. So obviously, shown here, we have these clips and we have this white jig, which I printed. And I designed here in the jig, there's many grooves for the clips. And in this bag of clips, it actually holds the tower on and it centers it perfectly. When you're putting on a leg on the tower jig, there's usually some space between the jig itself and the tower's leg. This causes some uncentering issues, which I noticed caused many problems. These clips center it perfectly and without human error. When you put it on, it just goes straight into grooves. The moment you press it down, it tightens. The moment you press it up, it loosens, so you can take off the clip easily like this. And this leg is also shown here. It can slide freely around whenever you've removed the clips. So these clips, what's the difference from tape? Well, when you're putting on tape, there is a lot of error involved, especially because tape is not very good and not very strong for taping on legs to these jigs, which causes a lot of minute errors that build up and accumulate, which causes the tower to be overall uneven, unbalanced, and can lead to a lot of circumstances where it collapses from those issues. I designed these clips with the idea that there should be some freedom in tower building. These clips have flexible legs and hands that don't harm the leg in any way, and they have a very nice groove here for the tower leg to go perfectly straight on, and it doesn't rub against it at all and doesn't hurt it. It's just there to stabilize it, essentially. And for these grooves, I thought, well, if there should be freedom for the leg to move around, then there should be freedom for the clips to move around, so you can adjust them based on the pressure. Notice how they're slanted inward. This means when it reaches the bottom of one groove, the clip tightens on and presses more towards the tower jig. And when it slides up, it presses outwards, which loosens it. As shown here, when I slide it down, it actually opens up, and when I slide it up, it closes in. And another thing is, as you can notice, on my tower jig, I do not have empty spaces here. It's completely filled in, and this actually allows me to draw on what I want to design before modeling and building my tower. The perk to this is that when drawing on these lines, it allows for insanely accurate results. When putting on cross bracings, people usually shift them down a bit or a bit up because they can't see the full trajectory of where the cross bracing is going. When compared to tick marks at certain points, I didn't find that too useful because those tick marks could be aligned differently or uneven or unleveled. I used a laser pointer to draw these cross spacings on, which could be a stretch for most people, but I think it worked out very fine. And let's move on to this red jig over here. So what is this? Well, this jig is a sanding jig, and it goes at the very top of the tower. Notice how it fits right in. And when it fits in, there is an opening at the top for the legs to go through. And when legs reach out of this red box, you can just sand it here, which allows the legs to be very smooth. But you might be wondering, why don't you just sand it from the tower itself? Well, by sanding it from the tower, that causes a lot of errors, especially made by human. Human error is a big result of this. When sanding, uneven sanding can cause the tower to have minute errors such as the slope differences of the leg and some tears which you might not notice. With a wider surface on top, it practically serves as a table for you to be able to sand instead of sanding a smaller surface like the top of the tower where you can rock around with the sanding stone or sanding square or whatever you use to sand a tower. I would be actually listing these 3D jigs down below. I'll have a file for these clips I used for the tower legs, for the red sanding square, and for this tower jig itself. And as you can see, when I put in my tower, it actually fits right in. And it fits very nicely. And the clips don't collide with the tower bracings at all. As you can see here, when I put on a clip here, it doesn't harm the leg and it doesn't cause any shifts. And this is great for building because it allows a lot of flexibility and does most of the work for you. You just need to stay focused while gluing and putting on the bracings because staying focused is a big part. Any small errors can lead to big consequences, and staying focused can mitigate those errors to a vast extent. Now, let's wrap up the video, shall we? Let's move on. Welcome to the wrap up of the video. Tower is one of the few events out of the builds that requires very, very intricate details. And behind the build logic of the tower, there's so much more, such as thinking of brand new ways to optimize designs, such as I did, and come up with jigs such as the ones I used in this video. Now, of course, there are many other events which require a lot of skill, but I think that tower might possibly be the most meticulous one out of all of them. It requires so much handwork and fluidity of your thoughts and how to project them onto a real life model. Building towers is not easy, and I'm really impressed of how many teams can accomplish such high scores. And my goal is to help out those state and national qualifying teams. I really want to see how high these scores can be optimized to. And hopefully for the people who watch my videos, come talk to me in the comments or message me in the links in the description below or details that I'll be listing. And as always, make sure to keep building. Now, let me share some results. So, this season, I'm competing with Del Norte High School for Division C. I'm currently a freshman in high school, and the competitions I've been to this year were Great Oak Invitational, which was in December, and we got a score of 3,600-ish with a 5.45 tower, I believe. And for our next competition, which was USC, University of Southern California, at that competition, we tied for second for both of our B and A teams and got a perfect score of just 4,000 flats, which was honestly pretty impressive. And at Triton Invitational, which was located in UCSD, we had towers that weighed 4.79, but since it was manual loading and we weren't aware of that, they didn't hold full, and one of them broke at 14.7. My personal project right now is to see how light it can go. My best right now is a 4.69 tower that has held full and which has a score of about 4,200. I really want to see all of you guys succeed this year, and thank you for making Science Olympiad such a great thing. See you next time. Thank you.